Welcome. We are moving very rapidly now toward Rosh Hashanah. Tonight is the second part of a discussion about the mystical significance of the shofar. We started last week, felt like 24 hours ago, and we're continuing the theme this week, analyzing the physical structure of the shofar, which I brought Baruch Hashem, a beautiful shofar that my parents have lent to me that we'll use as the basic model for what we discuss. Let's give a quick recap of last week for those who weren't here. We discussed that the shofar itself emits a very simple cry. The language of the Zohar says, Sa'aka gedola mi'omeka deliba. It is a simple cry, a deep cry from the depths of the heart. That's what it's called. Hence, if you look at the shofar and you listen to its sound, it does not follow the musical scale. It doesn't follow do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti. It is very non-musical. It sounds more like crying. Hence, according to some texts, it's the crying of a woman in labor. The labor being referred to here is the labor of one's spiritual development, and more importantly, revealing your spiritual potential. That is a laborious and difficult thing. So, we discussed two things. Number one, we use the metaphor that Hillel Paritcher brings, the famous chassid of Chabad, follower of the second and third Rebbeim, who says, if a river dries out, you can try to import water bucket by bucket from a nearby source, but that might not be practical. Or, prepare for some work, take out the shovel, dig deeper, reach a new vein of water beneath the earth. If you can reach that, the flow upward will replenish the entire river, no matter how yavesh, how dry it may be. So the shofar is the ultimate sound of reaching the depth of the heart, that new spring that's not been tapped into. The water, the light comes rushing forth, and one is now able to replenish him or herself, no matter how dry they may feel from the previous year. Make sense? That's why it's a simple cry. One step further, at the end we said that there are 4 types of blasts. One, tekiya, is simple. The second one, shivarim, is 3. Voo, voo, voo. It pauses in between. Then we have the 9 short staccato blasts of tru'ah. Da, 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 da. And then finally, tekiya gadol, which is the long single blast. And we mentioned that in the anatomy of the soul, there are 10 powers. The part of you called the crown is synonymous with that deepest part of you. The part of you that no matter what you've done or fallen into, or mistakes you've made, or consciousness that perhaps is not of where you want to be, no matter all that part of you called keter, that depth of you, is inscrutable and is by definition a pure spring that can never, ever, ever, under any circumstance, be contaminated. That's important to remember. We hold by Torah, no matter who you are, even, God forbid, a killer on death row. A killer on death row could, by definition, tap into that part of him, though he would still need to answer for his crimes in the mortal court. Death sentence or life in prison. But no matter who a person is, that core of who they are is reachable, provided they're willing to dig. So, the first blast, tekiya, the first simple blast, is reaching the nikudat halev, the inner dimension of the heart. Then, shivarim, blast, blast, blast. 3 corresponds to the renewal of the mind. The 3 powers called Chabad, Chachma, Bina, Da'at, wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. The reason why the 3 come after the 1 is if you don't reach the inner dimension of the heart and elicit that flow, you can't replenish the conscious powers. First, the Nikudat Halev. Then, the 3 powers of the mind. Then, 9 staccato blasts, Tru'ah, which is the connection between the 6 emotions of the heart and the 3 powers of the mind. 6 and 3 is 9. So those 9 blasts represent the drawing down of the renewed mind into the consciousness of the heart. And the final big blast, Tekiya Gadol, Malchut, is reaching a complete consummate expression where thought, speech, and deed is now shining and connected and vibrant. Okay, you can go home now, thank you. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, so we have to go to step 2 now. We've discussed now the basic idea of shofar. So if somebody asks you tomorrow, what is the shofar? The response should be, it is the means by which the inner point of the heart is aroused, the part that's never been touched before. The spring comes shooting back, and all the blasts that come after, and all their combinations, is to renew the mind, the heart, and the body. As simple as that. It's not all so simple, but that's the simple understanding of shofar. So tonight, part 2, we're talking about now the actual physical shofar, the structure itself. Why does it look the way it does? Why an animal horn? What are the secrets about the structure, the physical structure itself? So we're first going to model the very long, beautiful, decorative shofar that I have here. Good? Okay. According to halacha, the halacha states, if one holds the shofar in the middle, they need to be able to see from end to end. If it's too long that you can't see end to end, pasul. By halacha, it cannot be used for the tikiyot of Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur. So if I'm holding the shofar end to end, I need to see that. So the question is why do we have to have that detail? And the Mishnah is filled with many details about the structure of the shofar, but why end to end? So I want to start with the basic idea of this month, and we'll go into the end-to-end concept. What is the month of Elul and the first 10 days of Tishrei really about? What are we trying to do? Yeah, teshuvah, right? As simple as that. Although, it's not so simple, obviously. Nothing in Judaism is ever simple, ever. So, having said that, when we say teshuvah, that we're trying to fix things, Kabbalah teaches if you cannot see from end to end, you cannot do teshuvah. Step 1. So one more time. If I physically hold the shofar here, and I'm looking end to end, if I cannot see, and if I have to do this, too big. End to end. Kabbalah tells us if you can't go from end to end, you cannot do teshuvah, and hence the instrument of teshuvah, shofar, is pasul. So, what is the end-to-end of teshuvah? What does that mean? We mentioned last week 2 details. Says Lubavitch Rebbe in Likutei Sichot, commenting on his father's text, Likutei Levi Yitzchak. He says, everybody going into Rosh Hashanah has to bear in mind 2 things. Number 1, that you made mistakes. Congratulations, you're not perfect. And those mistakes impact the consciousness of time and space itself. So what do? Well, month of Elul, 10 days of tshuva, I sit, I contemplate my missteps, I commit to a better tomorrow, and I begin practicing. I begin practicing my teva shedi, my second nature. That's step 1. Step 2, though, which people often leave out, is God forbid you think that you are your mistakes. On the contrary, says the Rebbe, that part of you called the midpoint of the heart, nikudat halev, is connected to God forever, and no matter what you've done or have not done, you're connected. And it can never, ever, ever be disconnected. Maybe consciously, but not in actuality. So when we talk about the point of the heart that's connected forever, that should give you a very, very encouraging feeling. If you sit down and contemplate the idea that you've never, ever been, in reality, disconnected. That should tell you, wow, that means no matter how I feel about my connection, the feeling is insignificant. That's just simply a meter about how I feel consciously. But who I am, always connected. If I draw from that, that means I can always get reconnected at the conscious level. So, assuming we're all connected, and we're looking from end to end, what are the 2 ends that we have to remember? So one perush is, one meaning of it is, one end of shofar is the fact, no matter what I've done, the keter shebamalchut, I am connected forever no matter what. I can't get rid of him, and he cannot get rid of me. We're bound by a brit, by a covenant, by a marriage. We cannot be separated. The other end is, however, in space and time, I've made mistakes. I have to fix them. So one perush is, one end is you're connected. The other end is you have to reconnect at the conscious level. But there's another meaning. When we talk about Teshuvah, the Zohar, 2,000 years ago, in one of the books called Zohar Chadash, in Parshat Bereshit, analyzes the day that we just came out of. What was significant about today before we crossed over into the night? What was today that's so special on the Jewish calendar? First day of creation. We are now, as the stars have come out, transitioning to day 2 and the second day of creation. So we just went through the day where God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. So if you're not following that clearly, Rosh Hashanah is the 6th day of Ma'aseh Bereshit. This day that we just came out of was the first day, Yahi Or Vayehi Or. So the Zohar Chadash asks the following question. What does it mean, "Let there be light," and there was light? What does that mean? And the answer is so profound that in the world of modern physics, this is now being discussed, this concept. Says the Zohar, Yahi Or means let there be light in the future. Yahi Or, with the Yud prefix, is future tense. So the proper translation would be, let there be a future light. And now comes the stranger part. Then the Zohar says, but Vayehi Or does not just simply mean, and there was light in the present. The Vav, Vayehi, the V sound, inverts the tense to the opposite. So what it really reads grammatically is, let there be light in the future, and there was light in the past. That's how the Zohar explains how this works. In modern physics, they now acknowledge that the future actually impacts the past more than the present, which we'll explain in a second. So again, end to end is what qualifies the shofar to be kosher. The Zohar comes and says 2,000 years ago, let there be light, and there was light. Let there be light in the future, and there was light in the past. How do we understand that? End to end does not just simply mean a physical concept. It also means you have to understand that your teshuvah, remember, shofar is teshuvah. Your shofar, your tshuva, has to be from end to end. Trivia. What is the one name of God that appears in the book of Shemot, Exodus, and only 3 times? Revealed to Moshe Rabbeinu, and this is the only time in the whole Torah this appears. 3 times, to Moshe, at the burning bush, never appears again. Ooh, good trivia, right? The name that the Gemara says in Masechet Brachot Perek Kama is redemption. Ehyeh. Aleph and Hey, Yud and Hey. Ehyeh asher ehyeh. I will become that which I will become. I will become, says Hashem. So when Moshe asks Hashem, when I go back to these people and tell them that a new God has appeared, their God, not the gods of Egypt, not the whole metropolis of gods that the Egyptians know, Amun-Ra, etc., the God. But what do I call you? What is your name? Not Hashem. Ehyeh. I will be. The Zohar says, I will become. Okay. There's a clue there. What does it mean, I will become? In just basic English. If you say to me, you're going to medical school, are you a doctor? I say, no, but I will become one. So what does that mean? Yeah, but where am I going? Well, in the medical student, it means he's going toward becoming a doctor. He's not there yet, but he's going to become one in the future. This name, says the Talmud, is the name of redemption. Ehyeh is Geula. You need to have that name to come out of Egypt. Now, what is Egypt? Egypt, Mitzrayim, says the Alter Rebbe in Tanya and in many places. What does the word Egypt mean? Mitzrayim? Right? Meitzar. Mitzarim. Limited. Constricted. We say it in Psalms, Tehillim. Min ha-meitzar. Kratiyah. from constriction I call to you. Right? You know that pasuk? Famous. Min hametzar karatiya. Egypt means confined. So all Egypt is any state of spiritual confinement in which you are not free to be your true spiritual self. That's Egypt, stam. Now there's many levels of Egypt. There's the holy Egypt, the bad Egypt. This is brought very deeply by the Mittler Rebbe, over 40, 50 pages of analysis in his Memoriam. But for our purposes, all Egypt is confinement, and you are stuck. You're stuck in the confinement. So, to get out of Egypt, God says to Moshe the Redeemer, go tell them I will become. So the sages explain, Al Pi Chassidus, this is what it means. God says to Moses, the people are going to look at you and say, what are you, to paraphrase, what are you talking about? 210 years in exile. There's nothing left. Nothing left of us. Must have been true. Nothing left. We are at the lowest level of impurity. We're stuck. We're servants. We're under the idolatry of Egypt. They're too powerful, too big. We're stuck. We can't come out of this. Moshe says to the people, correction. As long as you can see your future, you're already on the path of redemption. To pause for one moment. We're good? Okay. We're back. So if it happens again, we'll pause this for a couple of minutes. Okay, we're good? Continue. Okay, so one more time. When we talk about the idea of coming out of Egypt, there's two levels to any exodus that you have to take. Number one, you have to remember you cannot come out all at once. Not every part of you comes out all at once. In fact, if you imagine, to use the Baal Shem Tov's analogy, you're stuck in a box and you want to come out of the box. How do you do it? They open the gate. How do you come out? Foot, then my hand, then my head. I can't just jump out. You have to move out limb by limb. Exodus is a process. If it weren't, you would go from Pesach straight to the giving of the Torah in one day. But nobody does that. We go through counting of the Omer, 49 days of counting. Because you can't come out of an exile like this. The final one, yes, but not this one. Not the one that we're talking about in Moshe's time, or anyone thereafter. It takes time. It's a process. So what's step one to being able to come out of Egypt properly? You have to see the future of what you're meant to be. In other words, if the Jew says, I'm not yet where I want to be, but I want to become this, and sees it. And he sees in his mind not where he is. He sees in his mind the future of where he wants to go. That's called the practice of Ehiyah. And that is why, according to Kabbalah, we say the name Ehiyah corresponds to Bina. It corresponds to the mind. This does not begin in the heart. It doesn't begin in the body. It begins with the mind saying, I'm stuck, but I can see there. I can see the future. In fact, when God says, I will be that which I will be, Ehiyah asher Ehiyah, the Kabbalists explain that the value of Ehiyah twice, Ehiyah has a gematria of 21. If you square the value, what is 21 squared? 21 times 21, 441, which equals the word emet. Truth. So truth is the byproduct of projecting and seeing your positive future. Not where you are. Where you are is rather insignificant. That's just where you're starting from. The more important question is, where are you going? So, Ehiyah asher Ehiyah, I will be that which I will be. I will become something I'm not, which is the truth of who one is. To get there, you have to first have a vision of it. If you can't see it, you can't become it. Bottom line, I remember actually back in gymnastics days, more than 20 years ago, our coach would actually say to us, if you can't envision the move on the apparatus, like on high bar, doing giants over the bar, if you can't see yourself doing it, don't even try to do it. Don't even try it. You have to see your own body going around it. You have to be able to project it. Otherwise, when you're doing it in the present tense, you don't have the feeling for it. You have to see yourself doing it. Teshuvah is no different. So, we hold the shofar end to end. What is one end? The future of where you want to go. That corresponds to, let there be light. Yehi or. That's the projection to the future. Now, we just said a second ago that after the future, Yehi or, Vayehi or, as the Zohar says, there was light in the past. What does that mean? I would think it would mean, okay, I'm in the present, go to my future, let there be light, and there was light in the present. What's it mean, light in my past? So the sages explain, people sin not because they're bad people, normally. Most people, ruach shtut nichnas bo, the Gemara says in Sota. You sin because, for the moment, you became foolish. Foolish. The mind left, and that's why typically the aftermath is, what was I thinking? If you were a psychopath, if you were a rare breed of people, you wouldn't care about this. There'd be no feeling about regret. There's no regret in you, except if you were caught, which is regret about one's own narcissistic existence. But most people say to themselves if they make a mistake, why did I do that? What was I thinking? Because there's a feeling inside of wrong way. So, because of the past, many people are doomed to repeat the sin over and over and over. Hence the word for sin in Hebrew is, one of them, avera, from the root word avar, the past. He's an existential prisoner of the past. So most people, they make a mistake, they hold on to the mistake, they never leave that place, and they're in pain all the time because of it, and they're stuck in the past continuously. And as the Baal Shem Tov teaches, you are where your thoughts are. So if your thoughts are stuck in the past somewhere, and you're physically in time moving to the future, you're really in the past. There's even a theory, it says in modern physics, that when the Big Bang took place, there was a mirror universe where time flowed the other direction. Whatever that means. But from a Torah perspective, it's very real. Your present can flow two directions, to the future or to the past. You have to decide where you're going. If you envision the future, let there be light in the future, I'll get there. Then what happens automatically is it shines back to the past, irradiates, so to speak, the darkness, freeing you a bit more to be in the present into the future. So one more time. I want to do tshuva. I sit down and I ask myself, where are my mistakes? I figure them out. Now, if I can't become that person overnight, well, congratulations, nobody can, in truth. So what do? I sit down and I ask myself, okay, starting tomorrow, how do I do something different to reach the future? How is that even possible? And the answer is, you have to first say, I wake up in the morning, the first vision I have to have is where I want to be relative to where I was. So, as an example, if you want to be a scholar, and you say to yourself, I don't like not knowing Torah. That bothers me. Okay, well tomorrow, when you wake up in the morning, you have to see yourself being a literate Torah scholar. So what do that day? Buy your first book and start reading the book. Do something toward the future. You're not going to be a Talmud Chacham overnight, but you're going to get there eventually. If you every day commit to the path and go toward the future, then you'll get there. Let there be light. And then, progressively, there was light in the past. It goes from the future to the past to transform the present. Says the Zohar Chadash, 2,000 years ago. So, the first rule here, let's go back to the shofar for a second, is before he sounds shofar, he has to hold it and see two sides. One side, we'll call it the small side, is the errors, the mistakes. Okay, the big side over here is you big. Gadlut the mochin in Kabbalah, expanded consciousness, adult mind. This is you actualized. Small is you unactualized and actualized. The big side is let there be light. I want to get here. That's the goal. The other side is the darkness of the past. It's constricted, right? Look at the two openings. One opening is big, one opening is small. The big side is the expanded, true, actualized you. The small side is Egypt, Meitzar, constricted. This is also why, as taught at length very deeply in Kabbalah, the name Israel, the first letter, the Yud, is the smallest of all letters in the alphabet, but it ends with which letter? The tallest letter of the whole alphabet. To say to you, you will always take the journey from point A to point B, but it's the middle that gets precarious. You have to be able to see where you're going. Okay, so, halacha 1. Hold the shofar, see two sides. Before Rosh Hashanah comes, even starting this week, leading up to Rosh Hashanah, then all 10 days of tshuva, make sure, practically, if you're plotting to change something, begin with the vision of who you want to become. If you can't see it, you can't do it. In fact, the Toldot, Yaakov Yosef of Polonia, one of the first great Hasidic masters to put the Baal Shem Tov's teachings together in lecture form, he writes in Parshat Bishalach that in the 9th plague of darkness, when darkness was all through Egypt, the Torah then adds the statement, but there was light in Goshen. And he asks the question, why tell us that? We already have the idea, the principle, that any plague that struck Egypt, the opposite would come to Israel. Why mention for darkness? And by the way, there was darkness over here, but in Goshen, where the Jews were, there was light. So he explains, because they weren't free until which plague? Which plague freed them? Mamash. Killing of the firstborn. Makat Bechorot, the 10th plague. This is still the 9th plague. But what began to happen by the 9th plague is there was already light in Goshen. They could already now see the future. Let there be light. So even though physically they were stuck in Egypt, spiritually they were already all the way to Mount Sinai. They were there. The body just had to catch up. So, rule 1 of shofar is, remember, to do teshuvah, see two ends, the constricted you and the expanded you. Practically that means there's the part of you that erred, and there's the part of you always connected. So now be encouraged, reconnect, dig deeper. How do we do that? The small side of you have a past. As the old saying goes, every saint has a past, every sinner has a future. Everybody has something, for the most part, that they regret. It's part of the human experience. So the past is the constricted Egypt self. The future is where you want to go. Let there be light, get to the future, and if you keep going that way, good news for you is there was light in the past. You will not get stuck in the present spinning in circles. You'll have a clear trajectory, you'll know where to go. Any questions? Does that make sense? Good. Level 2. Shofar, beyond the fact that we have the actual two ends, we have something else as well. When the Makubal, if the Kabbalist picks up the shofar, he's supposed to pick this up, and he's supposed to think to himself that the shofar relates to a name that we meditate upon in the Siddur. Who does not know the Ana B'Koach prayer that's in the Siddur? Okay, so this is a prayer that's composed of 42 words, which is a hint to the 42-letter name of God, which we're not going into right now. Except the second name is Kara Satan. Destroy the Satan. Take the accuser, all that stuff against you, and rip it apart. So according to Kabbalah, the Arizal says very clearly, when you pick up the shofar, you're supposed to think about the name Kara Satan. But why? Why does shofar take us there? Okay, so now, who's ever set sail on the sea and have been privy to an iceberg? That's right. Last year. This year. That's right. So did the Titanic. Didn't turn out so well. Okay, right. But an iceberg, we know from the movie Titanic, is what? What is difficult about icebergs? Yeah, it's like you see just the bare tip up here, and the bottom of it is hidden beneath the sea. Okay? Exactly. It's a gigantic, it could potentially be huge, but from your point of view, it's very small, very little. So there's a principle in oceanography called isostasy. This is the phenomena that as something grows in the sea, like an iceberg, it grows like this, simultaneously you have to deepen the base in order it doesn't tip over. Would the iceberg grow one direction only, up, what's going to happen? Yeah, it tips over, loses equilibrium. The fact it grows up and down at the same time means that it has balance. Balance. Now, the Tanzer Rebbe, the Divrei Chaim of Tanz, explains, if you go back to the fathers, who was the first one to have a name change? Who got his name changed and altered? Right. So he was first called? Then he was called? Avraham. The Torah even says, and never again will he be called Avram. The Talmud comes and says in Brachot, it's a forbidden thing. You cannot call him again Avram. Just like a convert cannot be made to feel that they've converted and reminded and reminded. He's gone through it. Avram became Avraham, leave him alone. Don't mention Avram again. Okay, fine. Isaac, no name change. Jacob, one of the most important ones. Yaakov became Israel. Now, Israel, Yaakov, is the chosen father. 12 righteous sons come from him, and his daughter Dinah. So, question. Good for the grandpa, good for the grandson. Why in the exact same section that says you're called Israel, it then immediately goes back and calls him Yaakov? In fact, it bounces back and forth like a ping pong ball. Israel, Yaakov, and nowhere does it say Israel, not Yaakov. He once was Yaakov, became Israel, leave him alone. Never again called him Yaakov. Why is it so important that the founder of the tribes and all of the generations thereafter, Bechor Avot, the chosen father, why does he not get the same respect as Grandpa Avraham? Once you're called Israel, leave me alone with Yaakov. Now, if we look at the shofar, we have an answer. Go back to the basic premise. The small hole where you put the lips to push in order to create the sound is constricted. The large opening where the blast comes out is open, expanded. So in Chassidus we're taught, everyone has to have two properties to be in balance. If you do not have this balance, you will sin. It means you're going to lose balance. You're not going to achieve your spiritual equilibrium. You can either A, sink into this world too deeply and become part of physical consciousness. The mind is overwhelmed by the fact that there's so much physicality. In fact, even in Hebrew, how do we say nature? Teva. The same root as drowning, like in the Shir Hayam, in the Song of the Sea, right? To drown. Because you can drown in physical consciousness. That is being too low. You're too in the world. Now what about being too high? As the Khatam Sofer brings in his Parsha, quoting Chovot HaLevavot, and a gate called the Gate of Separation, he says, know how the Jewish people do not have monks and priests and abbeys that remove themselves out of the world and do not interact with their fellow man. We don't have that. That's never been part of our Jewish experience. We have Irei Miklat, cities of refuge that a killer, Bishogeg, would flee to, but with other people, and temporarily, until the high priest passed away. We don't have people who can say, by the way, I'm not going to marry, I'm not going to have children by choice, I'm not going to be social. I will remove myself and stay in the mist, in the mountains, and bond to God. Don't have it. Because that is too high. Way too high. You're spiritual, but you're not doing the physical thing. You're not engaging in physicality. Either way, too much in the body, too much in the soul, and you're in trouble. Both can lead to a bad outcome. So, what's the perfect balance? What is the perfect balance for everyone? So, the Torah tells us by the prophet Yecheskel Hanavi. There's a verse that says, V'hachayot ratso v'shov. The angels called Chayot ran and returned. Ran and returned, ratso v'shov. Like the appearance of lightning, the verse says. Say the sages, if you can be a runner and a returner, you have the perfect balance. The Ravid, in his parish to the Sefer Yetzirah, says the numerical value of run and return, ratso v'shov, equals exactly Torah. That's Torah. Running and returning. Connecting to Hashem, drawing it down into the physical world. So what's that look like practically? Okay, Jewish experience. You wake up in the morning. What's the first thing you do? After Modeh, after washing the hands, after Birkat HaShachar, what's the first actual activity that we do? By Jewish law. In the morning, morning blessings. Davening, right? Either you're blessing or going to shul. Good job. You're doing something where you are literally in the God mode. That corresponds to the run up. And then after that, you take a little bit of time to study Torah, get some breakfast, and then where do you go? Work. And where is the majority of your day? Work. Isn't that odd? Why wouldn't the sociological model be this? Wake up in the morning, a couple hours of work, and then Torah for everyone all day. Why not? Why do we do wake up, hour and a half, according to the Zohar, Parsha Noach, prayers called Sha'ah v'chetzi, 1 hour and a half. Okay, so you're bonding to God, then you're out the door, and then you're spending the majority of your day working in the physical world. That's called return. The objective is the light of the upward run must come into the vessels of this world. Incredibly enough, in the physics of light, we observe the same thing. When a charge hits, for example, neon gas. What color is neon gas? Whatever it is. Green, purple, whatever the color is. But before you see it, the charge hits it, the electrons inside the atoms that form neon gas jump to a higher quantum number. They jump up. It's called excitability. They get very excited and run up into the sky, so to speak. And what happens then? They're there, and then they settle back down again, and that's when the photon comes out and you see light. So when do you see light in physics? At the return of the particles run downward to a normal, stable quantum orbit. So it's incredible how everything in the Torah is inscribed in the laws of nature and science itself. From physics to chemistry to biology, it's all the way through. So, one more time. Run and return, running up, excitability, running up to God, returning back down to a level of stability to bring the light into the physical world. So now, going back to the shofar, the run up, running to your highest spiritual moment, is called, according to the Tanzer Rebbe, Israel. The letters of Israel are the letters, says the Arizal, Rosh Li, a head to me, the highest part of the body, the contemplative you, the spiritual you. Then you have to come back down. Got to return back down again. When you come back down to a normal, stable energy level, impregnating the world with your divine consciousness, that's called returning back to kelim, to vessels, synonymous with Jacob, the smaller opening of the shofar. Israel, the bigger opening, running. Yaakov, the small opening, returning. What's Jacob's name? What's Yaakov's name? What's the root? Akef, which means heel, the heel of the body, the exact opposite of the head. So one name is the head, one name is the heel. Rosh ve'Akef b'yachad is one. When a person has an iceberg phenomena, he runs up, but simultaneously he deepens his base in the world. In fact, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, if you observe the Rebbe's behavior, the Rebbe was a nistar. The Rebbe's nature was so completely unknown to anyone that if you think you understood the Rebbe or the Ben Ish Chai of Baghdad or any of these, you don't understand them at all. What you would see is a little glimpse of who they are, like an iceberg at the top. And yet, on the social scene, interacting with doctors and scientists and politicians, everyone, from the high to the lowest, everyone had access. Why? Because no matter how high you run, if you can't bring it down into a strong base in this world, you're not, by Jewish standards, balanced. Ratzo v'shov, Israel and Yaakov. So, says the Tanzer Rebbe, if you can be together, Israel and Yaakov, the head and the foot, top and bottom, run and return, you are doing tshuva in the ultimate sense. Hence, Israel plus Yaakov equals 729, which equals Kara Satan, destroy the Satan. That's why when you pick up the shofar, you have to see the two ends and contemplate, to do teshuvah properly, I have to A, run, the bigger side, running up, and return back into the smallness of the everyday physical world to bring the two sides together. If I can do that, I can be Israel and Yaakov. Israel in the morning, Yaakov the rest of the day. Back and forth, run and return. If I have both, there is no Satan. The Satan is null and void because you're balanced. You're back. Any questions? One more time, please. Yes.
What does it mean by gadol? You say we have to see the ending.
Yes.
When it's gadol, that means you cannot see the body.
So the question he asked is this. We say in the Amidah, sound the big shofar. Tikka b'shofar gadol, right? Which sounds like the opening here. Tradition tells us that the ram, the ayil, that Avraham Avinu brought at the binding of Isaac has two horns. The smaller horn we heard at Mount Sinai. The shofar gadol we're going to hear in the future in the coming of Mashiach, the coming of the Messiah. So I have a question for you. In prayer, what is our direction? Right, physically east, good. But in terms of up and down, Israel, Yaakov, where are we in the Amidah, the silent Amidah? Are we in Israel or Yaakov? Israel, right? In fact, that's why we speak, according to the Zohar, it says, you shouldn't even hear your own voice when you're doing the Amidah. It's a discussion. It's a machloket. The poskim say in the Shulchan Aruch, al pi nigla, that you can hear your voice, but nobody else can. The Zohar comes and says, you shouldn't even hear your voice. In fact, the opening line to introduce the Amidah, Adoshem sifatai tiftach. God, my lips, you open. You're doing it. You're so bound to God, you're actually saying in the first line, I'm not even moving my lips. I'm aware now that you're doing it all. The illusion is I'm doing it. But in truth, there's nothing else but you. Ata Hashem levadcha. Now that is completely up. You're so up, in fact, you're not even conscious of anything below. In fact, one time, Baal Shem Tov, when he was davening the Amidah, he'd be davening, and they would see large barrels of cotton and other supplies in the back of the shul would start to shake. He'd physically shake the room when he would daven. So he had the unique ability to be up and down at the same time. But for most of us in the Amidah, you're supposed to be lost in it. You run for the sake of the return, but in the Amidah, nothing. Says the Talmud, not even a snake wrapped around your foot. In the first Mishnah of Perek Hey in Brachot, if a snake wraps around your foot, you should be oblivious to its existence. That's how high you should be. Bound above. So now, we have the concept of, in prayer, We're meant to go up, and that's where we are, right? Now it makes sense. Sound the great shofar. If you want to use this analogy here, during prayer, you're supposed to be at the big end. Bound above, no awareness at all, no hargasha of the happenings of the surrounding world. When you come out of the prayer, then the small opening becomes paramount. You have to have both. One more idea. Now in the days before the Mashiach, for all of the millenniums of our work in this world, what are we doing in the world? Changing what into what? Use your own words. Changing this into what? Darkness to light. What else? Physical to spiritual. What else? Bitter waters to sweet waters. Like Moshe Rabbeinu in the desert in Bashalach, when he came to the bitter waters and he put the staff in it, the Torah into it, and converted it into sweet waters. So all these conversions are today. Hence, you have to run up and then come back and convert the world below. But what about Mashiach's time? In the Messiah's time, the prophets say, "V'yet ruach hatuma'a avir min haaretz, v'nigla kavod Hashem, v'ra'u kol basar yaktav kipi Hashem diber." The spirit of impurity will pass away, evil's gone. You will see God with your own eyes, literally, and all flesh will experience it. Okay, so wait a second. So in Mashiach's time, do I have to return to convert anything? No, it's converted. The Alter Rebbe says in Sefer Tanya, all of the lights that we draw down today are secret. It's called Metana Beseter, a gift in secret. In Mashiach's time, it'll be revealed. All Mashiach's time is the revelation of the collective effort to draw lights into creation for the duration of these millenniums before the Messiah's arrival. When the Mashiach arrives, we see what we've done. You will see what you did. All of the light, all the illumination, all the power that you drew into this lowly world. So now, the Zohar comes and says, in Mashiach's time, there's what's called 50,000 Jubilee years. What is a Yovel? What's a Jubilee? How many years? 50, right? And there's Shemitas. Every 7 years is a Shemitah cycle. It's an ascent, an ascent, an ascent. In Mashiach's time, every minute, this is literally by the prophets, every minute you will have a new experience of God that you didn't have a minute ago. You will run infinitely upward and no returning back. Because there's no reason to. All the sparks are clarified. The dross is gone. The evil is gone. So, if you remember from the Torah, we have Nadav and Avihu, the two sons of Aharon. Remember them? That died. They went into the Mishkan with a foreign fire and died. The sages say at great length everywhere, because they ran, they didn't return. Didn't come back. But in Mashiach's time, you're going to be Nadav and Avihu 24/7. Running and running and running and running and higher and higher. In fact, just as a parenthetical note, that's why in the current landscape of our world, what is the new breakthrough in science that will change everything? It'll never be the same again. What's the most important breakthrough of the modern age? By far. That's a discovery. What's the breakthrough of the age that will... Huh? Okay, yes, but it's a certain thing that we've developed that's now going to think better than us, quicker than us, and beyond us. AI, artificial intelligence. Okay, but now think about that for 1 second. According to many futurists, in the next 30 years, there's going to be a merger between man and machine. You're going to have to adapt by merging AI with the human body. Already they're talking about merging your cell phone into your head. You can access everything just through your memories, your thoughts. Sounds like science fiction. It ain't science fiction. These are detailed things that people are working on right now. Because AI is quicker, smarter, and can way outthink any of us, it'll break through the things that we can never even begin to imagine, but we're its creators. So in other words, what 50 years ago would be a breakthrough, even go earlier than that, go to Isaac Newton, go to Mendel Gregor, Albert Einstein. Look at the gaps in between where nothing happened. doing alchemy. It is the gaps in between, nothing happened. Every 50 years, 100 years, 1,000 years, breakthroughs. Now, every week, in every field on the globe, the breakthroughs are happening faster and faster. But why is that? Because we're coming to the Shofar Gadol, the big shofar. In the Mashiach's time, it's not any longer run and return. Breakthrough, slow down. Breakthrough, slow down. It's breakthrough, 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 up, 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 higher, higher, beyond anything you can ever imagine. You're seeing it now on the technological side. That's where it begins. The whole industrial revolution and beyond to 2019 now, you're watching the increase of the Shofar Gadol. And that Shofar Gadol is going to be an age of running and running and running higher. Right now it's technological, it'll lead to spiritual, as the Zohar promises. So we're in the age now of things advancing. That's why it's Shofar Gadol, because what we're saying ultimately is we don't want the small shofar. Mount Sinai, according to the Midrash, the giving of the Torah in the year 2448 after creation was a marriage, right? According to the Midrash, Mount Sinai was the chuppah, hovering over their heads, like the Talmud in Shabbat explains. What's the ketubah? What's the marriage contract? Torah. Who's the groom? Hashem. Who's the bride? Us. Who escorts the groom to the bride? Moses. Who escorts the bride to the groom? Aharon. Who are the witnesses? Heaven and earth. The whole thing is a marriage. Even the money that was given from the Egyptians at the Yam Suf is part of the first Mishnah of Kedushin, that you can transact engagement through giving of money. So every detail about marriage is actually inside Mount Sinai. The fifth Rebbe, the Rebbe Rashab, in Ayin Beis, he says like this: in truth, compared to what's coming, the whole of Mount Sinai, all of its miracles, all of its wonders, all of the experiences that we had, that they saw, sound, and heard sight, as the sages explain, all those things are only called erusin, engagement. You were engaged at Mount Sinai. You had the chuppah, you had the ketubah, the bride circled the groom, exchange of a ring, it's all there. What didn't happen yet? Yichud room. You didn't go into a secluded private domain where you are one. You're not one yet. In Mashiach's time, you're going to reach the level of nisuin, one, completely one. So, we are currently now in the era pre-Mashiach of observing how things in the world are rapidly moving, very, very quickly. Even longevity, this goes back to basic biblical principles. Is aging normal? The answer is no. Aging is abnormal. It's a condition of after the Garden of Eden. The clock began ticking when Adam sinned. Outside of Gan Eden, the biological clock began. According to our tradition, we're going to go back to the timelines we saw in the first 10 generations from Adam to Noach. 300 years, 500 years, 900 years, immortality. It's happening now. They already know exactly why we age and how we age and how to stop the aging process. We're there. 10 more years from now? Forget it. It's a level that you can't even begin to understand, because you have to follow the trends very carefully and watch how the science develops. So we're in an age now of shofar, not katan, gadol. So, for us, for Rosh Hashanah, we take the shofar, and now we have the following basic meditations. Number one, you must remember that no matter how you feel subjectively, you are always and forever connected. That's the big side of the shofar. That side you have to see in looking at the shofar. You don't see it, you can't do tshuva. If you don't know that you're always connected, you can't do tshuva. Because what does teshuva mean? It doesn't mean repent. What does it mean? Return. Well, if you're not connected, what are you returning to? Nothing. Nothing at all. So, you have to return to something you're connected to. So the big opening is, I'm always connected. The small opening is, that being said, I might have fallen into a constricted consciousness because of my mistakes. So what do I have to do? Okay, hold the shofar, let there be light, and there was light. I have to first see my ultimate future standing as et ha'adam yashar, a straight person, right? Standing up, strong, focused, walking the path. Then I have to move to my future, knowing vayehi or, the other side of shofar, will eventually let go of me. That's step one. Step two, all balance, the essence of Torah, is achieved by a balance of opposites. Run and return, big and small, high and low, fire and water. If I can't see two ends, the big side of the run, the small of the return, I can't do tshuva. And how do I do that? By remembering, for every run, there has to be a return. For every achievement I make for myself on a practical level, let's take a simple one. You come into a lot of money. You're blessed with fortune. That's a run. That's high for you. The return is ma'aser. You tithe it. You give some to other people. You return it back into this world. You become a great scholar. That's your run. You're with God all the time. You don't share it. You didn't return. There's got to be, until Mashiach's time, run and return. The run is Israel, Li Rosh. The return is Yaakov, heel. Israel, Yaakov together, Gematria, Kara, Satan, destroy the Satan. Once you have balance, you have everything. Everything. There's nothing left. And lastly, the shofar today, though it looks big over here, we're aiming for the shofar gadol. Know that in Mashiach's time, you will run and run and run and never have to come back down again. Then you can run into the ultimate essence of Hashem, 50,000 Jubilee years, infinite revelations, infinite emanations, until everything merges in complete, total singularity. So this is a tidbit about the shofar. But now we have at least a meditation we can think about, in the plural, maybe two. Any questions? Yes?
I just was wondering about the prayer that you made reference to that had you said it had the 49 name question that was stated.
Yes, Shem Mab. It's 42. It's derived out of the first 42 letters of Genesis, Bereshit, through a substitution system.
But which prayer is that, like in this Amida?
So it's before the Amida. When you go into the beginning of the book, after you finish the sacrifices, korbanot, going into Ezu Makoman, where it goes through the Breita of the different places of the sacrifice, it's called Ana B'Koach. I'll show it to you.
Okay, thank you.
And that's the composition of, without getting too much into this now, it's running up. That's the name of the run. The name called 72 is actually the return. But for the purpose of Rosh Hashanah, we're trying to run up. Great question. Any other questions? Who is Isaac's mother? Sarah, right? Abraham's wife, Sarah Imenu. In the Sefer called Me'or V'Shemesh, the Rebbe Klonimos says, what is Sarah? It's the acronym of Shofar Rosh Hashanah. So all of the secrets of Rosh Hashanah and the shofar and sweetening dinim and all the things we didn't talk about tonight are hidden inside these parshiot. So the birth of Sarah, or rather Sarah is giving birth to Isaac through Abraham. Abraham is the man of kindness. Ushpizin de chesed. Isaac, Pachad Yitzchak, Gevura. They're opposites. So the whole secret of Sarah, Shofar Rosh Hashanah, is connected to Abraham and the mother of Isaac. Meaning, the whole idea of these parshiot is running and returning. Isaac is the runner, Abraham is the returner. So everything in the Akedah, everything inside the first parsha about his birth, is related to the idea of fire and water running and returning. That's in short.
Sarah's name changed to Sarai?
Sarai to Sarah. Yeah. In fact, Sarai could not give birth, Sarah could. There's a whole secret about their names changing related to the idea of running and returning. Again, it's beyond the scope of this class, but it's that general concept. Shofar is always about the water of Avraham and the fire of Isaac, which combines in which personality? Who's the perfect balance of the two? Jacob, right? The third. There are three fathers, the Gemara says. One of the synonyms for Jacob is heaven, Shamayim. So even the Gemara says in Masechet Chagiga in Perek Bet, what is Shamayim? Shin Mem Yud Mem. You have the word Mayim, alluding to Abraham. You have the Shin of Esh, fire, alluding to Isaac. It's a perfect blend of both. Alternatively, our last point is, the inner dimension of Jacob's called mercy. In the shofar, he's trua. He's the 9 short staccato blasts. So what is mercy? How do we say it in Hebrew? Rachamim. What is rachamim? It's you judge somebody as guilty, which is first this way, then you have mercy, which is this way. You're first Isaac on him, you're guilty, it's gevura, then you swing back to kindness of Abraham and you show mercy. So it says in Kabbalah that what is rachamim? You have again the word mayim, alluding to who? Abraham. And rach, resh chet, is gematria Yitzchak, alluding to his son, gevura. So all these blends allude to the balance precipitated by shofar. Okay? All right, thank you for coming. We'll see you next week. Happy Rosh Hashanah. And all further questions we'll take off the camera, but we're still here for a few minutes.